Hey guys, it's Daniel Bloodworth, and I've had this idea for a level in my head for at least a year that I wanted to do. It was an obscure game from my past, and I basically I started getting into it, and then I started finding all this other little details and things that I liked about the game so much, and like I can't just do this level because then I have all these other like weird asides that just don't fit in. I'm gonna just kind of bring you back to my youth, to the very first RPG that I've ever played before Final Fantasy, before Dragon Quest. This is a 1987 game on the Commodore 64 called Legacy of the Ancients. It was also put out on the Apple II, and in 1989 it was put out in DOS. I looked through some screenshots. Neither one of those versions look as good to me as the Commodore 64 version that I played. It was developed by a company called Quest Software, which from what I can tell is not the same company that more people probably know. I'm not really sure, but it was published by EA, and it was done by Chuck and John Doherty. And it seems like they only did 4 games. Questron in 1983, Questron 2, and Legend of Black Silver, which both came out in 1988. And like I said, Legacy of the Ancients came out in 87. And they all have a very similar interface. They all have, kind of almost like an adventure-style commands on the left side of the screen. And then there's, in some parts of the game, there's an overworld, kind of like Dragon Quest. And then in dungeons and other areas, there's more first-person perspective going through these hallways and mazes and things. And sort of the story behind it is you're just a peasant or a shepherd, depending on whether you read the in-game text or the manual. And you find this warm body, and there's a scroll and an armband and some other things there. And upon putting on the armband, then you see this museum appear in front of you. And the Galactic Museum, that was the original idea that I wanted to cover for level, because the idea behind it is that these ancients, unspecified ancients, built museums like this on many different worlds all around the galaxy or the universe, or however broad they want to be. And they're kind of like this one-stop shop to kind of highlight that world, and there's specimens they brought in from the outside, but not to disturb the world or its culture. The museum is only visible to people wearing the armband. So now this is something that you've discovered because you found it. But inside of the museum, there are all of these different displays. They look like little TVs, and it kind of the reason I thought of it is it kind of is similar to how Mario 64 has the paintings, in that like you walk up to an exhibit and there's a description for whatever it is, and then some of them serve as like portals. So like you kind of warp into this town, Thornberry, or you warp into another part of the world where there's like pirates' treasure, and there's a series of islands and a dungeon that you have to explore. And but it's not just that. It's not just warping to places. There's also spots where you'll get a side quest to find some artifact that's gone missing from the museum. There's one where they just talk about native currency. This planet, like many other planets, uses gold as currency. And here is a small portion of gold as an example. And for you, it's like, whoa, they just give me a lot of gold. So it's kind of funny like that. And then there's another one, which is really interesting, to where if you examine it early in the game, it's called weaponry. If you examine it early in the game, you'll get a knife. If you go back later in the game, if you wait, you'll get a bladed staff, which is a much better weapon for when you get it. It's much more valuable than just grabbing the knife, because there's knives all over the place. And then there's also a caretaker who will give you hints and quests along the way as you progress. Now, all of these exhibits, they take coins for you to be able to interact with them. So you find coins made of various gemstones, whether it be jade or topaz or amethyst. And so there's kind of this back and forth that goes on. So you use the coins that you have to examine the exhibits that you can. And then you have to go out into the world and do some questing, build yourself up, get some gear, and hopefully along the way you'll run into merchants or other people who are just randomly selling coins. So then you can go back into the museum and you can progress further. So that kind of covers the museum itself. But beyond the museum, there's a lot of cool little things that, like, I wouldn't say this is the only game or the first game or anything like that, but there's little things that, like, I wouldn't have, I don't feel like have necessarily survived the years in RPGs. For one thing, like random encounters when you're walking around, it has that whole turn-based mechanic, and as you're walking around, you won't just like go into battle, but you'll get a warning. It's like there's a creature approaching from the west, or something along those lines. And so you have, you can either confront it, go straight at the creature, or you can, walk in another direction or go on your way, and maybe the creature will catch up with you, maybe it won't. Another part is there's this whole food mechanic, so that as you're walking around, you constantly, like, you have to have a food supply, or else you'll die. Or you know what? When I went back to it, I didn't let myself run out of food this time, because I remember that being a stumbling block before. So I don't remember exactly what happens when you run out of food. But what's interesting with that, though, is that when you kill certain creatures, you get this dialogue that pops up, and it's like, would you like to use this creature's flesh for food? And you can decide yes or no. And you have to be a little smart with that. You don't want to take a poisonous animal's flesh for food. And sometimes, you'll get unlucky if you do that, and you'll lose hit points because you got sick. And another thing that's interesting to me with the random encounters is that you won't just run into enemies. You'll run into farmers and pixies and other, more humanish creatures that are selling you things, selling you potions, selling you food, selling you museum coins sometimes, selling you different armor and weapons. Actually, I got some really good armor early on in this when I replayed it just now, just from a random passerby. And what's also cool there is that some, like, bandits and warriors, you don't know. So you're like, your first instinct might be to fight, but if you speak, then you will actually, be able to get something cool from them. But you never know whether they're going to be willing to talk, or whether they're just going to attack you. And then when you get into towns, there's, I think, 12 towns in all. There's some things in there. There's like a little blackjack game. There's this thing called Flip Flop, which is kind of like pachinko, which is actually a bizarrely good way of making money early in the game. And then there's a bank where you can put your money and gain interest over time. And then the weapon and armor shops, they're not static, as in a lot of games. Their inventory changes each time that you visit the town, and as you progress, they get better and better gear. And then there's these buyback shops. So, once you've got a lot of stuff and you don't need some of the older stuff anymore, you can go to this buyback shop and you can sell it more than you would at a regular armor shop or weapon shop. And then you have this whole haggling mechanics where it's like, oh, I'll pay you 15 gold for this. It's like, no. Give me 60. No, 60 is too high. I'll give you 20. And then you work your way down to a middle. And then the other thing that was really cool for something, again, in 1987, you could just kill a shop owner or a banker, rob the shop, rob the bank, and then when you come out, then the whole town, all the guards in town are like coming after you, and so you've got to escape town, and sometimes you'll find out that it isn't really worth it. I think I stole like 250 gold, and then I used like I don't know, maybe $500 worth of herbs to get out of town. Another weird thing with herbs is there's a museum display that you have to interact with in order to even be able to use herbs. They're not inherently able to heal you. You have to eat this fruit that's in the museum, and then the interaction of that and the herbs is what actually allows you to heal. So you start off the game not even being able to use healing herbs, and it makes things kind of tense at the beginning. Another thing that's interesting to me with this game is stats. You don't gain experience. It's an RPG where you don't gain experience. You level up after talking to the caretaker, after you've viewed a certain number of exhibits or done some things out in the world, and he'll level you up. But then when he levels you up, you don't get all of these stat increases. You just get higher health. and each one of your other stats is based on other things that you do in the world. So endurance and dexterity, they both have these weird little mini games where endurance, you're holding a shield and blocking fireballs, and dexterity, you're shooting arrows at these fireballs, and it's just getting quicker and quicker, this little mini game. And so I felt like that's an interesting way to tie it, because like you have to do something dexterous in the game in order to increase your dexterity, and it's a valuable thing to have increased, because otherwise you're just kind of missing enemies when you're trying to attack, and so the higher your dexterity goes, then the more likely you are to be able to hit an enemy when you're in combat. The other thing that's funny about it is that you can actually go back and play that mini game, and if you don't do as well as you did last time, you can actually lose dexterity or lose endurance. It's really funny. And then some of the others, charm, you have to find this temptress that's hiding, that's behind a locked door in a castle, and you can either choose gold or you can choose to raise your charm, which lowers the prices in shops. Intelligence, there's this kind of pokerish type domino game where you kind of have to call each other's bluff, and then strength you only get by completing a dungeon. So, and then speaking of dungeons, like I said before, these are all like first-person mazes. It's the kind of thing that, like, back in the day, you might want to do on graph paper or whatever. Although, when I started playing this game when I was 7. I don't think I beat it until a couple of years later, when I was like 10 or something like that. But I don't think I did the graph paper thing. I don't think anyone had told me about that amazing method of mapping out a dungeon. So I think I just kind of wandered my way through it. But there's just these winding mazes, and you can't really tell which way you're going until you get a compass, and then the compass will tell you whether you're going north, south, east, or west. And then these hidden traps, these crazy monsters. The graphics on the monsters is way more engaging than it is out in the world, because in the world, as you've seen, it's just like a little stick figure, and there's other little tiny little things. And then and I think my favorite out of all those monsters is this kind of creeping guy called Mr. Potato, who's like stretching his arm out to you. And then there's some spells that you can only use in dungeons. In addition to like normal flame and firebolt spells, you get, I love the word for this, befuddle, which it's a confusion spell, but it doesn't make enemies attack themselves. It just keeps them from attacking you. And then there's Psycho Strength, which is, just raises your strength and makes combat a lot quicker. There's all these hidden traps around. What's kind of crazy is, so in the Pirate's Treasure Dungeon, which is the first real big dungeon that you do, you get all the way down. There's like 8 floors to explore and get down to the bottom. And there's this huge line of treasure chests, and you get all of the treasure. You get the key items that you want, and then you have to climb your way all the way back out. And there's not as many health boxes left, because you got them on the way down, and so it can be really tense. Just getting out of the dungeon, you're just like, I just can't wait to get out of here. So yeah, I just, it's a cool game for me to go back to now. I think I'd play a little bit more of it. Like I beat it when I was, like I said, I was around 10 or so. And then I think when I was 18 or 19, I went back and played some more of it, not a whole lot. And then now, this is like, first time in over 10 years that I've really, sunk my teeth into it. And I think I'm going to try to finish it up here and play all the way through it again. There's some other cool things in there as well, like, there's this big castle that you kind of loot and explore and return to several times. You sail across the ocean and get to the Pirate's Cave. And then at the very end, like, you actually like get on a Pegasus and fly across the ocean to the final level. I don't know many people that have heard of this game or played this game. Definitely nobody I've ever worked with at GT. But if you have fond memories of Legacy of the Ancients, or if you played Questron or The Legend of Black Silver and you think I should go back and play those, let me know. And I'm looking forward to what you think. Thanks.